I still remember the moment I held that court document in my hands. My fingers trembled as I read the words printed across the top: lawsuit, transfer of property rights. My own parents were suing me. Not for money I owed them, because I did not owe them a single cent. They were suing me to force me to give my house to my younger brother Kyle. The house I bought with my own sweat and tears. The house that represented every sacrifice I ever made. I used to believe family meant everything, that blood would never betray you. That piece of paper proved me wrong. And it was only the beginning. Before I tell you how my own family tried to destroy everything I built, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this story gets way darker than a simple lawsuit. Trust me, you will want to hear what they did next. I grew up in a middle-class family in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. My father, Thomas, worked at a manufacturing plant for 30 years. He was the kind of man who believed hard work solved everything, but also the kind who thought sons had different values. My mother, Dorothy, stayed home and kept the house running. She baked cookies, organized family dinners, and made sure we never missed church on Sundays. To anyone looking from the outside, we seemed normal, maybe even happy. But inside that house, there was always a clear favorite. My younger brother Kyle was 3 years younger than me, and from the moment he was born, he could do no wrong in their eyes. I was the responsible one, the one who had to set an example, the one who had to sacrifice. Kyle was the golden child, the one who got second chances, third chances, infinite chances. When I turned 16, I got my first job washing dishes at a local diner. I worked 20 hours a week while keeping my grades up, because I knew college would not pay for itself. My parents made it clear they could not afford to send both of us to school, so if I wanted to go, I had to figure it out myself. I did not complain. I saved every dollar I could, applied for scholarships, and worked 3 jobs during my freshman year at community college. I studied computer science because I was good with numbers and logic, and I knew tech jobs paid well. Kyle, on the other hand, got a brand new pickup truck for his 18th birthday. I remember watching Dad hand him the keys in the driveway while I was getting ready to leave for my night shift at the grocery store. Kyle whooped and hollered, and Mom cried happy tears. Nobody seemed to notice I was standing there in my work uniform, exhausted, holding my bus pass. When I asked Dad why Kyle got a truck when I had to take the bus for years, he just shrugged and said, "He needed it more than you did." Kyle started college the next year at a state university 2 hours away. He dropped out after 1 semester. Too hard, he said. He moved back home and started working random jobs, none of which lasted more than a few months. He got fired from a fast food place for not showing up. He quit a warehouse job because it was too early in the morning. He tried selling supplements online and lost $2,000 of Mom and Dad's money. Through it all, they made excuses for him. He was still figuring things out, they said. He just needed time to find himself. I graduated with my associate degree and transferred to a 4-year school in Seattle. I lived in a tiny apartment with 2 roommates, ate ramen most nights, and graduated with $15,000 in student loans. But I had a degree, and I had a job offer. I started working as a junior developer at a software company in Seattle, making $45,000 a year. It was not much, but it was mine. I was 23 years old, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something real. That was the year I met Sarah. She was a graphic designer at the same company, working 2 desks down from mine. She had dark, curly hair, kind eyes, and this way of listening that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. We started talking during lunch breaks, then coffee breaks, then after work. She did not care that I drove a beat-up Honda, or that I was still paying off loans. She liked me for who I was, not what I could give her. That was new for me. We dated for 2 years. I got promoted to senior developer. My salary jumped to $70,000, then $85,000. Sarah and I talked about the future, about marriage, about building a life together. I proposed on a rainy Saturday in a park by the water. It was not fancy, but it was us. She said yes. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at a courthouse. My parents said they could not afford to fly up from Portland, even though I offered to pay for their tickets. Kyle did not come either. He said he had to work, though I later found out from a cousin that he spent that weekend at a music festival. It hurt, but Sarah squeezed my hand and reminded me that we were starting our own family now. That was what mattered. For 3 years we saved. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, split every bill down the middle, and put away every extra dollar we could. We did not go on expensive vacations or buy new furniture. We had a goal, and we stuck to it. When we finally had enough for a down payment, we started looking at houses. We found a small 2-bedroom place in Bellevue, about 20 minutes from work. It was not fancy. The kitchen was outdated. The carpet was worn, and the backyard was barely big enough for a grill. But it had good bones, and it was ours. We closed on it in March 3 years after we got married. I was 30 years old, and I finally owned something that nobody could take away from me. Or so I thought. 6 months after we moved in, Kyle called. His voice sounded strained, almost panicked. He had been living in a cheap apartment in Portland, working part-time at a call center. He told me his landlord kicked him out because he was late on rent too many times. He needed a place to crash for a couple weeks while he figured things out. Sarah and I talked about it. She was hesitant, but I felt like I owed it to him. He was my brother, after all. We agreed he could stay in our guest room for 2 weeks no longer. Kyle showed up 3 days later with 2 duffel bags and a trash bag full of clothes. He did not say thank you. He walked in, looked around, and said, "Nice place. You must be doing pretty well for yourself." There was something in his tone that made my stomach tighten, but I ignored it. 2 weeks turned into 3, then 4. Kyle made no effort to look for a job or find his own place. He slept until noon, played video games until 3 in the morning, and ate whatever he wanted from our fridge without asking. Sarah started locking our bedroom door at night, because she felt uncomfortable with him wandering around the house. When I finally sat him down and told him he needed to leave, he exploded. "Are you serious right now?" he shouted. "I am your brother. You are really going to kick me out onto the street?" I tried to stay calm. "You have been here over a month, Kyle. You are not looking for work. You are not helping with bills. You need to figure out your next step." He glared at me. "You have this whole house. You make good money, and you cannot help out your own brother. What kind of person are you?" Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Mom. Kyle had already called her crying, telling her I was throwing him out for no reason. She begged me to let him stay longer. Just until he got on his feet, she said. He was family. I had to help him. When I tried to explain that he was not even trying to help himself, she cut me off. "You always were selfish, Ethan," she said, and hung up. That was the first time I felt that deep sinking hut in my chest. The realization that no matter what I did, no matter how hard I worked or how much I sacrificed, I would always be the bad guy in their story. I eventually forced Kyle to leave after 3 months. He packed his bags slowly, making a show of it, slamming drawers and muttering under his breath. As he walked out the door, he turned to me and said, "You are going to regret this." I did not know then how serious he was. 2 days later, Dad called. He did not ask how I was doing, or whether Sarah and I were okay. He launched straight into a lecture about family responsibility. "You are the older brother," he said, his voice hard. "You have more than Kyle does. You have always had more. It is your job to take care of him. That is what family does." When I tried to explain that Kyle was an adult who needed to take responsibility for his own life, Dad cut me off. "I raised you better than this," he said. "You are a disappointment." Mom sent text messages, long rambling paragraphs about how hurt she was, how she could not believe I would turn my back on my own brother, how she thought she raised me to be a better person. She sent photos from when we were kids, Kyle and me building sandcastles at the beach, playing in the backyard. She wrote, "Where did that kind boy go? What happened to you?" I showed the messages to Sarah. She read them quietly, her face growing paler with each one. "They are trying to manipulate you," she said. "They want you to feel guilty for setting boundaries." I knew she was right, but it still hurt. These were my parents. How could they not see what they were doing? Kyle started spreading lies. He told cousins, aunts, uncles, anyone who would listen, that I was wealthy and selfish, that I refused to help him, even though I had plenty. He posted vague messages on social media about family betrayal and how some people forget where they came from. People I had not spoken to in years started messaging me asking if I was okay, saying they heard I was going through something. It was humiliating. Then 3 months after Kyle left, I got a thick envelope in the mail. It was from a law office in Portland. Inside was a summons. My parents were suing me. I read the documents 3 times, trying to make sense of it. They claimed they had loaned me $50,000 to buy my house. They said they had documentation proving it. They were demanding I either pay them back immediately or transfer ownership of the house to Kyle as repayment. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the papers. "This is insane," I said out loud, even though I was alone in the kitchen. They never gave me anything. Sarah came home from work an hour later and found me sitting at the table staring at the lawsuit. She read it, her expression shifting from confusion to anger. "This is fake," she said. "They are lying. You have bank records. You have proof you saved for this house." But as she kept reading, her voice wavered. "Ethan, they have a lawyer. They have documents. They are actually trying to take our house." I called my parents that night. Mom answered. Her voice was cold, detached. "We gave you opportunities your whole life, Ethan. We helped you more than you realize. Now it is time to help Kyle. He needs this house more than you do. You can always buy another one." "You never gave me a dime for this house," I said, my voice rising. "You know that. This is fraud." "That is for the court to decide," she said, and hung up. I hired a lawyer the next day. Her name was Patricia Hendricks, a family law attorney who came highly recommended. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, and did not sugarcoat anything. She reviewed the documents my parents submitted and shook her head. "These are fake," she said bluntly. "The signatures do not match. The dates do not line up, but proving forgery takes time and money. This is going to cost you at least $25,000 to fight, maybe more." Sarah and I sat in Patricia's office, holding hands, trying to process what was happening. $25,000. That was our emergency fund. That was the money we saved for car repairs, medical bills, maybe even starting a family someday. Now we had to spend it fighting my own parents in court. We cut back on everything. No dinners out, no new clothes. We canceled our planned anniversary trip to the coast. Every extra dollar went to legal fees. And through it all, Kyle and my parents kept pushing. Kyle started showing up at our house unannounced. He would park his truck across the street and just sit there staring at the house, taking pictures. He posted them online with captions like, "This should have been mine." Neighbors started asking questions. Mrs. Anderson, the retired teacher who lived next door, pulled me aside one afternoon and asked if everything was all right. "That young man has been here 3 times this week," she said gently. Should I be worried I did not know what to tell her? Mom called Sarah. I did not know about it until Sarah told me later, her voice shaking. Mom had cried on the phone, begging Sarah to convince me to do the right thing. "Kyle is struggling," Mom had said. "He has nothing. You and Ethan have everything. Please help me make him understand." Sarah had listened quietly and then said, "With all due respect, Dorothy, Ethan does not owe Kyle anything. We built this life ourselves." Mom had called her ungrateful and hung up. The pressure was suffocating. I started having trouble sleeping. I would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it had come to this. How could the people who raised me, who were supposed to love me, be doing this? Sarah would curl up next to me, her hand on my chest, and whisper, "We will get through this. We have to." But I could hear the fear in her voice, too. One night I found her crying in the bathroom. She tried to hide it, turning away and wiping her face quickly, but I saw. I knelt down next to her and wrapped my arms around her. "I am so sorry," I said. "I never thought they would drag you into this." She shook her head. "It is not your fault. But Ethan, I am scared. What if they win? What if we lose everything?" I did not have an answer. All I could do was hold her. 2 weeks before our court date, I had to fly to San Francisco for a 3-day work conference. I did not want to go, but my boss insisted. It was a major client presentation, and I was the lead on the project. Sarah assured me she would be fine. "It is just 3 days," she said. "I will keep the doors locked. I will call you every night." I kissed her goodbye at the airport, that knot of worry sitting heavy in my stomach. But I got on the plane anyway. The first day went fine. I called Sarah that evening, and we talked about nothing important. She had ordered takeout, watched a movie, and was getting ready for bed. The second day, I tried calling her around 6 in the evening. She did not answer. I figured she was in the shower, or maybe fell asleep early. I tried again at 7. No answer. At 8, I started to panic. Sarah always answered her phone. Always. I called 5 more times. Nothing. I texted her. "Are you okay? Please call me." The message showed as delivered, but not read. My chest tightened. Something was wrong. I could feel it. I called Mrs. Anderson, our neighbor, and asked her to check on Sarah. "Of course, dear," she said. "Let me walk over right now." 5 minutes later, she called back. Her voice was uncertain, worried. "Ethan, the front door is unlocked." I went inside and called for Sarah, but she is not here. It looks like someone went through some drawers in the bedroom. Should I call the police? My heart dropped. "Yes," I said. "Call them right now. I am getting on the next flight home." I booked a red-eye flight that left at midnight. I barely remember the 5 hours in the air. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a message, a missed call, anything. When we landed in Seattle at 5:30 in the morning, I had 3 missed calls from the police and 1 text message from my mother. The text said, "Sarah is with us. She is safe. We are saving her from you." I read it twice, 3 times, trying to make sense of the words. Saving her from me, I called Mom immediately. She did not answer. I called Dad. He picked up on the 4th ring. His voice was calm, almost smug. "Sarah is fine, Ethan. She is here with us. She told us how you have been treating her. We are keeping her here until you come to your senses." "What are you talking about?" I shouted into the phone, standing in the middle of the airport terminal. People turned to stare, but I did not care. Sarah would never say that. "Put her on the phone. Now. She does not want to talk to you," Dad said. "Not until you do the right thing and give Kyle what he deserves." Then he hung up. I called the police immediately. I explained everything. The lawsuit, the harassment, and now my wife was missing, and my parents admitted they had her. The officer I spoke to sounded skeptical at first. "Sir, this sounds like a domestic dispute between family members," he said. But I insisted. "They took my wife without her consent. That is kidnapping. Please, you have to help me." He agreed to open an investigation. I drove straight from the airport to Patricia's office. She was already there when I arrived at 7 in the morning, waiting for me. "We need to file a police report and get a restraining order immediately," she said. "This crossed a line. This is criminal." She also recommended I hire a private investigator. "We need evidence," she said. "We need proof they took her against her will." I hired a man named Greg Townsend, a retired police officer who now worked as a private investigator. He was in his 60s, gruff but kind. He drove down to Portland that same day and started surveillance on my parents' house. By evening he called me. "I have something," he said. "A neighbor across the street has a security camera. I got the footage. You need to see this." He sent me the video file. I watched it on my laptop, my hands trembling. The footage showed Kyle and my father walking up to my house 2 days earlier, around 3 in the afternoon. Sarah opened the door. She looked confused. They talked for a minute, and then Kyle grabbed her arm. She tried to pull away. I could see her mouth forming the word no. My father grabbed her other arm. She struggled, but they were stronger. They dragged her to their car, and my father put his hand over her mouth when she tried to scream. They shoved her into the back seat and drove away. I watched it 3 times, bile rising in my throat. My own family had kidnapped my wife. I forwarded the video to the police. This time they took it seriously. They obtained a warrant and planned a raid on my parents' house for early the next morning. I was not allowed to be there, but Patricia and Greg were in contact with the lead detective. At 6 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Patricia. They found her, she said. She is okay. She is shaken up, but she is okay. I drove to Portland faster than I ever had before. The police took me to the station where Sarah was waiting. When I saw her, I almost collapsed. She looked exhausted, pale, her eyes red from crying. But when she saw me, she ran into my arms. She held me so tight I could barely breathe. "I knew you would find me," she whispered. I never stopped believing. The police told me Sarah had been locked in my parents' basement for 2 days. They gave her food and water but refused to let her leave or use her phone. Kyle had told her over and over that I did not deserve her, that I was a selfish person, that she would be better off without me. She had refused to believe him. She kept demanding they let her go, and when they would not, she stopped eating. That was when they started to panic. Kyle, my father, and my mother were all arrested. They were charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and conspiracy. During the investigation, the police also discovered the forged documents they had submitted in the lawsuit. Kyle confessed under pressure, admitting the whole thing had been planned. They had hired someone to forge my signature on fake loan documents, edited old emails to make it look like they had given me money, and created fake bank statements. Their lawyer Benjamin was also implicated for knowingly submitting false evidence. The lawsuit was thrown out immediately. The judge called it a malicious abuse of the legal system. Kyle was sentenced to 18 months in prison. My father and mother received 1 year of probation and were ordered to pay $30,000 to cover my legal fees. Benjamin lost his law license. The judge also granted Sarah and me a permanent restraining order. None of them were allowed within 500 feet of us, ever again. At the final hearing, the judge looked directly at my parents and said, "You betrayed your own son in the worst way possible. You should be ashamed of yourselves." My mother cried. My father stared at the floor. Kyle looked angry, like somehow this was still my fault. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Justice had been served, but my family was gone. Really, truly gone. Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. She leaned close and whispered, "We are each other's family now. That is all we need." After everything that happened, Sarah and I needed time to heal. The trauma did not just disappear once the court case ended. Sarah had nightmares for months. She would wake up in the middle of the night, gasping, convinced she was back in that basement. I would hold her until she calmed down, whispering that she was safe, that I would never let anyone hurt her again. Some nights I had my own nightmares, dreams, where I could not find her, where I was too late. We started seeing a therapist together, a woman named Dr. Rachel Kim, who specialized in family trauma. She helped us work through what had happened, taught us how to process the betrayal without letting it consume us. She told me something I will never forget. You cannot control what your family did to you, but you can control how you move forward. That became my mantra. It took 3 months before Sarah stopped having nightmares. It took me longer to stop feeling guilty. Even though I knew logically that none of this was my fault, part of me kept wondering if I could have done something differently. Dr. Kim helped me see that I had done nothing wrong. Setting boundaries was not selfish. Protecting my wife and my home was not cruel. I had every right to the life I built. One evening, about 6 months after the trial, Sarah and I were sitting in our backyard. It was late summer, and the sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. We were drinking coffee, something we had started doing together after dinner, just sitting quietly and being present with each other. Sarah looked over at me and said, "I used to think blood meant everything. Now I know loyalty and respect matter more." I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. She was right. Family was not just about who you were born to. It was about who showed up, who stood by you, who loved you even when things got hard. we slowly started rebuilding our lives. We took a trip to the coast, something we had planned years ago but never got around to. We spent a weekend hiking, eating seafood, and sleeping in late. We reconnected with friends we had lost touch with during the chaos. We hosted a small dinner party and filled our home with laughter again. It felt like coming back to life. I also realized that family could be chosen. Patricia, our lawyer, became a close friend. She checked in on us, regularly invited us to her holiday parties, and even introduced us to her book club. Mrs. Sanderson, our neighbor, became like a grandmother to us. She brought over casseroles when we were too tired to cook and sat with Sarah when I had to travel for work. My co-workers, people I had only known professionally before, reached out with support and kindness. One of them, a guy named Marcus, told me, "Man, I cannot imagine what you went through. If you ever need anything, I am here." And he meant it. On my 32nd birthday, Sarah threw me a small party. She invited Patricia, Mrs. Anderson, Marcus, a few other friends, and some of Sarah's family. There were no blood relatives of mine there, but the room was full of love and laughter. We ate too much cake, told terrible jokes, and played board games until midnight. At one point I looked around the room and realized something: this was my real family. These were the people who cared about me, not because they had to, but because they chose to. That was worth more than anything. I also learned to set boundaries in other areas of my life. I stopped feeling guilty for saying no. I stopped overextending myself to please people who did not appreciate it. I learned that my time, my energy, and my peace of mind were valuable. I did not owe anyone an explanation for protecting those things. Sarah and I talked about the future. We decided we wanted to start a family of our own someday, but we wanted to make sure we were ready, that we had healed enough to give a child the love and stability they deserved. We also talked about what kind of parents we wanted to be. We promised each other we would never play favorites, that we would teach our children that love was not conditional, that family meant showing up even when it was hard. Looking back now, I do not hate my parents or Kyle. I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for people who cannot see love beyond what they can take, who measure worth by what someone can give them. They lost a son and a daughter-in-law who would have done anything for them if they had just shown a little respect, a little kindness. They chose bitterness and greed over love, and now they are living with the consequences of that choice. Sarah and I built our life on respect, honesty, and hard work. No lawsuit, no kidnapping, no amount of cruelty could ever take that away from us. We own our home free and clear. We have careers we are proud of. We have friends who love us. We have each other. That is more than enough. If there is one thing I learned from all of this, it is, this family is not about blood. It is about who shows up when everything falls apart. It is about who believes in you when the world tries to tear you down. It is about who holds your hand in the dark and reminds you that you are not alone. And when the dust settled, I finally knew who my real family was. So let me ask you, have you ever had to cut ties with toxic family members to protect your peace? How did you rebuild after that loss? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear your story. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening, and I hope wherever you are in your journey, you find the peace and family you deserve. Take care of yourself. You are worth it.